Hi everyone, it's Clarice and today I'm going to be telling you why you should read the Lock and Key series by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. This is a comic book series that follows the Locke family. After undergoing something extremely tragic, the family has to move into this old family house of theirs called the Key House. After some exploring, the Locke children realize that the Key House is full of these magical keys, which all have different powers and unlock different doors that do different things. They also eventually find out that this house and these keys have a dark and mysterious past. A past that is slowly creeping back into the present and into the lives of the Locke children. So why should you read Lock and Key? Reason number one. Joe Hill took a concept which, while intriguing, is also relatively simple, a concept like magic keys, and turned it into something so twisted. He came up with such an interesting concept for the backstory of these keys and the Locke family, and even came up with really creative uses for the keys and what different powers they could have, and made all these things intertwine and contribute to the story so well. Reason number two, a creepy, suspenseful, and yet magical atmosphere. This is a comic book series that would be classified as horror. I don't read a lot of horror. In fact, I don't read horror at all. For me, I would also classify it kind of as dark fantasy. And because of that, this book just had this dark atmosphere to it. Like I always felt like something terribly wrong was going to happen all the time. And that kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. But there are also times when the magic of it just added this sort of childlike innocence to the atmosphere of the book, which I also really loved. But it also made the dark moments just that much darker. Reason number three, beautiful illustrations. I haven't read a lot of graphic novels and comic books, so recently I've been reading them a lot more. But I feel like I've read a good number of them. Out of all of them though, in terms of the art, Lock and Key is still among my favorite. Joe Hill is such an amazing writer that I think that the dialogue and the story of this would really be able to stand on its own. And without the illustrations, I still think it would make a pretty amazing novel. But in that same sense, I also believe that Gabriel Rodriguez's illustrations could stand on their own as well. Currently, I don't have physical copies of Lock and Key, but I would definitely be willing to buy it just for the illustrations. They're just so well done and really added to the atmosphere of the book. And those two together, the writing and the illustrations, just went together perfectly. Reason number four, complex and interesting characters. Each and every character in this series, not even just the main ones, had such an interesting backstory and or personality that I ended up caring deeply for almost every single one of them. And when I didn't care about the characters themselves, I at least cared about their stories. I found myself getting so invested in the stories of all of these characters, which surprised me because that's not something that normally happens with graphic novels or comic books for me, just because you know how with novels you're really able to get inside the heads of these characters through their thoughts and inner dialogue, and you don't get that as much in comics and graphic novels. But somehow, just through the story and through all the things that were happening to them, I was able to grow an emotional attachment to all the characters, which is amazing. And it's because of that attachment that these characters just got me so emotional in this story. At times I got so angry, at times I got so sad. I even almost cried a little bit at one point. And reason number five, a complex and intense plot. It wasn't the only thing I was reading, and I read books in between reading this series, but for the most part I just couldn't stop reading this series. I always needed to know about what was going to happen next or learn more about the characters and about their backstories. There's just so much suspense that I couldn't stop reading it, and so many layers to the story that I was always so interested and so curious to learn more about it. Some of the layers to this story were introduced early on and kind of just sat in the back of my mind while I continued reading. But later on, the story would go back to those details and just leave me thinking, oh, that's what that was for. It's just kind of amazing how all these little details contributed to the overarching story as a whole. While technically I gave some of these volumes 4 stars and most of them 5 stars, there wasn't a dull moment. I loved the beginning, I loved the middle, I loved the end, but most of all, I loved how every single element of it came together to form this cohesive whole. In case I haven't made it clear yet, I absolutely love this series. One of my favorite book series of all time, and definitely my favorite comic book series of all time, at least as of right now. If you like comics, dark and creepy plots, or just good storytelling in general, I highly recommend this series. So that was my review of Lock and Key. If you have read this series or are planning to read this series, I would love to hear your thoughts on it down below. As usual, please like this video if you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!